have faith and hope that we're going to get through this and be able to meet together again and kind of help each other out as much as we can. So today we have a distinguished honorable speaker who is the councilman for District 19 for our area, which includes Middletown and surrounding towns. And Mr. Anthony Piaggiatini has been councilman since November of 2018. Anthony, we thank you for your service in this capacity. Anthony has also been a successful businessman here in Louisville for over 20 years, so he understands our needs, many of our needs as business people. He's also served in the Marine Corps, so thank you again, Mr. Piaggiatini. And he's a family man with twin daughters and is active in his church. So we welcome you to our Middletown luncheon. It seems like the least we could do is give you lunch, but we're so glad you're here and we're eager to hear you speak. So thank you for spending some time with us today.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. As Laura indicated, the last time I got to present was leading up to the election. Glad to do an update today. I've got brainstormed a bunch of issues that I think will be relevant and that I know my office gets a lot of questions about. So I'll go through those pretty briefly here and then just open it up for questions. Want to make sure I'm addressing things that are most relevant to you all and get as many of those questions answered as possible. So first thing I thought I'd talk about some citywide issues that are impacting us all and talk about what we're doing related to those. And then I'll get more and more specific into what's impacting Middletown and things that cover the immediate surrounding area. So first of all, obviously, the Louisville Metro Police Department and what I'll just call public safety and police reform as a broad category has dominated the conversation at Metro Council over the past several months. There is no question, and I think there's even more recent reports of issues within the department that we need to do something different, that the department has not been led, certainly the way that has, at least I'm not happy about the way it's been led and the way it's been managed. We have now gone through, we are on our third chief currently and within the past maybe 7 months. And then we'll have a new chief probably early next year, which would make 4 chiefs in a year. And that's somewhat unprecedented change at the highest leadership level for the department. The good news is I think we're moving in the right direction related to the chiefs. I've got a great relationship with Chief Gentry, who's the current interim chief, and she was always assumed to be the interim chief until we get a permanent replacement, which a bipartisan group of people are working on interviewing right now. And I think they're landing on some decisions that we should have in the near future. Some of the reform things that have already passed, we passed a Metro Council, some regulations related to use of force. We have currently pending a piece of legislation related to creating an office of the Inspector General, the type of office that exists, for example, at the federal government related to military and other department oversight, where you have sort of an independent auditor that does nothing but focus on that one department. So we do have an Office of Internal Audit, but they are fairly small and they are required to audit all departments. Considering the size and scope of our public safety apparatus, there is a desire to look at some group or organization that looks directly at LMPD. So that's still in committee currently, but that will be coming in front of a full Metro Council vote in the next couple of weeks. And then we just approved the FOP contract, and that created a lot of news. And just to be clear on that, the LMPD, the rank and file LMPD, have been serving for almost 2.5 years now without a contract. Their contract expired 2.5 years ago. In an ideal, we just approved the contract recently for the Department of Corrections. We approved that contract within months of their prior contract expiring. In an ideal world, that's how it should work. So number one, I would consider it a failure of Metro government, the fact that we didn't have a contract until now. The way that works, the mayor's office negotiates with the labor union The mayor's office signs it, the labor union votes on it, approves it, and then it comes to Metro Council for an up or down vote. And just to be clear, that's all we get to do as Metro Council people. We get to vote for it or against it, and that's it. We don't negotiate. We are not involved in the process. We are simply an oversight function of the process. We either accept it in its totality or reject it in its totality. Are there terms and sections of the contract that if I were negotiating it, I might have done differently? Sure. But we had a situation where we had new officers making $35,000 a year as a starting salary coming out of the academy. If you go to work for Amazon right now in their warehouse with zero experience and are just a package picker, you start at $15 an hour, which is almost $32,000 a year. So I can be a high school graduate with no experience and make $32,000 a year, or I can do one of the most dangerous and life-risking jobs on earth, which is to be a police officer, where I have to strap on body armor and make life or death decisions every day and get paid $3,000 more per year. That is unsustainable. We've seen that in our recruiting numbers. We used to fill our recruiting classes every single year. We have not done that in the past year and a half, approximately. Further, we've seen a significant reduction in applications, and we've seen a mass exodus from our police department. And even Chief Gentry, our current interim chief, her and I met, and she said emphatically that without approving that contract, we would have seen many more officers leaving the department. And as it is, we can barely keep up with the current demand from the public related to just doing the basics of LMPD. So I voted to approve the contract. I think it's a great step in the right direction related to stabilizing their pay and getting it to a competitive pay structure. But there's more to come on that because, quite frankly, what has been overshadowed in the conversation about police reform is the massive increase in homicides we've seen across this city and the massive increase in violent crime. That needs to be the forefront conversation. There is a new task force that's working on it between the U.S. Attorney's Office, a series of federal agencies, including the FBI, as well as local LMPD, to attack the violent crime issue and to attack the problem of gun homicides. We passed our annual the annual record in homicides in this city almost 2 months ago, and we still have a month and a half left. So this is the deadliest year on record for this city. And as business owners, we can't, it is impossible to be a retail business, a local business, and operate and be successful if the public doesn't feel safe and feel that there's a sense of stability. So that's a huge issue, something we'll continue to work on, and we've taken some steps in the right direction. A couple other quick legislative updates, things that are happening right now. For example, the budget. Because of COVID-19, there's been a lot of speculation about what's going to happen to the overall Louisville Metro budget. The federal government approved, you probably all heard of CARES funding, right? The CARES Act. And that included funding, more specifically, about $131 million for the city of Louisville to pay for impacts related to COVID-19. Most recently, about a month and a half ago, the Department of the Treasury, the Trump administration Department of the Treasury, revised the rules to that money and was more clear on what we can and can't use that money for. As a result of that revision of the rules, which was turned out to be a wonderful blessing for us as a city, the last fiscal year, our fiscal year begins and ends on July the 1st, right? The fiscal year that ended this past July the 1st, we will know, and I'm on the budget committee, we get updates every month on this. We'll know next month what the final assessment is for the last fiscal year. But right now we're projecting a surplus from last year into this year of $26 million. To put that in perspective, the last time we had a surplus from one year to the next, it was $500,000. So to have a $26 million surplus is somewhat unprecedented in local city government. We are going to be holding on to that money because there's a series of risks this year, right? We still don't know what the full impact of COVID is. We still have pension obligations and other issues. We still don't know what the fallout is going to be here. So there is a movement to sort of sit on that, to move that into this year's budget, to make sure we can shore up this budget and pay for our expenses. And then there will, of course, be eventually a debate and vote on what to do with that money. No decisions have been made yet. Please keep your eyes out and certainly make it known to my office and the mayor's office regarding what you would like to see that, once we know precisely what the dollar amount is and that's made public, what you would like to see those dollars spent on. I'm also on the Government Accountability Committee. We're currently wrapping up one investigation and we're in the midst of another investigation. The investigation we're wrapping up is related to TARC. We will have the report on that in the next month to 2 months, and then we'll be submitting that to the public, and both in what happened and how we're going to reform our agencies to make sure we rein in any risks related to sexual harassment in the workplace. The other investigation is related to what has been happening during this period of civil unrest in our city. Again, focusing on who knew what happened and how we can prevent and stop the mistakes that happened in the past from happening in the future. I worked on, primarily sponsored and passed unanimously an ordinance related to illegal graffiti and vandalism. That problem has exploded in our city over the past 2 years and really exploded over the last 6 months. We essentially are assessing almost the maximum civil penalties that we can for illegal graffiti. So it's another tool in the toolbox on a comprehensive strategy to tackle graffiti, which includes, and we're going to be working on this in the budget, more graffiti abatement and cleanup teams to stop that from festering. I'm working on right now anti-doxing legislation. That is when somebody puts the name and personal address of a government employee that they disagree with for the purposes of potentially causing harm or harassment and that type of thing. That has happened to multiple city employees, not the least of which LMPD officers throughout the past 6 months. And we need to take a stronger stance against that. And finally, I'm working on some, what I'll just broadly refer to as pro-business legislation. We're taking a look at, and we're starting small, but this is a call to you all as business owners. The city has these regulations that pile up over the years, right? One in particular that I'm looking at right now is relates to how apartment complexes and HOAs have to staff pools. If they own a pool, how they have to staff it, what they have to do. And we have one of the most stringent regulations compared to any of our peer cities. And that regulation was created because in the 1980s, albeit very tragically, one child died of drowning in a pool. Now, that's a tragedy. We don't want any children being hurt or drowning, and drowning is a serious issue. But that created a series of rules and regulations that 30 and 40 years later are really outdated, and we need to make some changes. This can happen to any regulations and laws related that impact business. So if there's any rules and regs, ordinances that are impacting your business that could be done better, where there's better examples that create a more business-friendly environment, please contact me. I'm the vice chair of the Labor and Economic Development Committee, and I'm going to be looking to engage with more and more legislation that we want to make sure we have an appropriate regulatory environment. I'm not somebody that advocates for no regulation, but it needs to be the appropriate level, and there is such a thing as too much regulation. So where that exists, let's change it, and let's make it a more business-friendly environment for our city. I'll wrap up with quickly here with some very specific things for District 19, some investments and changes that we've made over the past couple months / year or so. For example, the Long Run Golf Course, which is part of Long Run Park. The golf courses used to lose money for the city. We used to subsidize them to the tune of $1 to $2 million a year out of the general fund budget. Well, Metro Council engaged in a very serious reform effort over the last 2 years as part of, fine tuning our budget and making sure we weren't wasting taxpayer dollars. Those changes and some market circumstances related to COVID, honestly, have now shifted it where our public golf courses are a net revenue contributor to the city. So they not only are not subsidized, but they're beyond break even and are returning money to the general fund. That's an incredible turn of events compared to previous years. And we've also invested in our long run golf course. We did a capital improvement to their driving range, which will allow for more classes, tournaments, golf instruction and that type of thing to generate even more revenue and create more opportunities for District 19. Small thing, but we have some new benches at one of the TARC stops on Shelbyville Road. They are red benches, actually come right out of the old Cardinal Stadium. When Cardinal Stadium was demolished, we took some of those seats out and have been putting them in different TARC bus stops throughout the city. And I made the application to get one of them in District 19. So right on Shelbyville Road, you see these three old red benches those are from the original Cardinal Stadium. We made sure in the current budget to increase, to maintain or increase our current paving. We continue to be on a trajectory to catch up on all of our roads within the next couple years. And Metro Council is very committed to maintaining that and keeping our roads and sidewalks paved properly. Again, this is a huge pull for business, for commerce, that people want to drive on reasonable roads. You'll notice on Johnson Road, the intersection of Johnson Road and Shelbyville Road, there's a new turn lane there to help with traffic. So that was something that was started with Councilwoman Denton before I took this seat. And we were happy to see, after pushing for several years, the completion of that project. You may have heard that JCPS has approved a new school that will be in the Eastwood community, so east of Middletown. It'll be a middle school, help with the immense growth that we've had in District 19 to get enough schools and infrastructure to support that population growth. So we're very excited to see that happen. With that said, I'm working with Representative Miller and the state to get the intersection at Eastwood Cutoff and Shelbyville Road renovated so that we have a better ingress and egress that will affect that school with new busing and parents coming in and out of that area. So we're pushing for more and more infrastructure spending and development to support the expansion of the residential neighborhoods in District 19. And last but not least, one of the things I am most proud of, and it'll be a little bit until it's completely finished, but I want to thank Mayor Chapman and the City of Middletown. We were announced recently, we have a permanent location for the Middletown Library. As you well know, the East Government Center is it's officially closing this month in November. The 8th Division, the LMPD 8th Division, is moving to a new location on Westport Road. And the other major piece of infrastructure there was the Middletown Library. I worked very closely with Mayor Chapman and with the administration, with the Fisher administration, as well as Councilman Winkler of District 17, just to the north of us, to work on a permanent location for Middletown Library. And we announced recently that a lease has been signed between the City of Middletown and the City of Metro Louisville, which will put that location where Lisa Lynn Designs used to be, right? So that location right near the Starbucks, sort of where old Shelbyville Road and Shelbyville Road V off, and you have that storefront there. That will be the permanent location for the Middletown Library. We have $500,000 of capital spending already allocated from the current budget to do the capital improvements to that building. We will work on any additional capital monies that are needed. Construction should begin soon. Again, we're using the existing building, but in order to be a full service library, there's some changes that need to be done internally. There needs to be a new fire suppression system and that type of thing installed. And that, of course, is capital dollars. That'll be executed over the next several months. We're anticipating, fingers crossed, a summer of 2021 sort of grand opening. That is what we're pushing for, and we hope to be able to deliver on, and we're confident we can deliver on that. But very happy that we finally found a permanent space. There will be a period of time, obviously, that the Middletown Library will be closed because we have to move out of the East Government Center, and we haven't reopened the new location. But honestly, I would consider that a small price to pay to have a permanent partnership between the city of Middletown and Metro Louisville, to have a library within walking distance of Eastern High, walking distance of Height Elementary, and just in a great centralized location for this greater Middletown community. So with that said, Laura, I'm going to stop. I think that's all the stuff I sort of had as notes for quick updates for everybody. Looking forward to answering any questions that I can on items of interest to you all.
Okay, I'm just checking to see if we have any. Well, yes, I do. It says, has there been a measurable impact, or do you have an opinion on how police forces in towns like Middletown and J-Town, et cetera, have helped to alleviate the burden of crime prevention and services that have burdened understaffed LMPD officers? If beneficial, are more town police departments economically feasible? And who controls the traffic light timing on Shelbyville Road?
Well, the traffic light timing on Shelbyville Road is, and Jerry, excuse me, Representative Miller, maybe you can double check me here. That's managed, even though that's a state road, that is generally managed by, the timing of those lights is managed by Metro Louisville. So if there are issues there, you can let my office know. You can make a 311 request if there's any problems. I will tell you that there is, they do monitor. There is a connection between those traffic lights and the real-time traffic monitoring center. So they monitor them pretty regularly, but nonetheless, if there are problems, let my office know. You can put in a 311 request and we will take care of that.
And you are right, it is Metro that controls the timing.
Thank you. But thank you very much to the state and to Representative Miller for pushing this for all the repaving on Shelbyville Road, as well as the restriping and the reflectors and such. Regarding the police departments, for example, the latest of this is the Middletown Police Department. LMPD, even if they're at full strength, and they are not at full strength, they're down easily 150 officers, and they'll probably be down closer to 200 plus officers by the end of the year, given our current attrition rates and how slowly our recruit classes can recruit and refill those things. Again, I think the contract will help that, but it's going to be a year or two of rebuilding to get to full strength. LMPD allocates resources based on where the crime is, particularly based on where violent crime is, right? Which means the 8th Division, which covers almost something like 1/5 of the eastern, or maybe even more, 1/4 of the eastern part of the county, from Ohio River all the way down through Stuart Benson's district to the south. And it covers, I want to say, like 7 or 8 Metro Council districts. They at any given time maybe have 7 or 8 officers on duty, right? Day shift, night shift, et cetera. And they have detectives and all. So I'm just talking beat police officers, plus you still have detectives and others that support those operations. Having a Middletown Police Department significantly assists in that they are then handling certainly more, day-to-day lower level incidences, where it be minor property crime, whether it be, burglaries, right, for your business, businesses along Main Street in Middletown, et cetera. Those are the types of things that Middletown can more rapidly deploy on, and then that frees up the resources of LMPD to take care of the what I'll call unincorporated areas. So what has happened is the Middletown Police Department now officially, because they're at full strength, takes all the primary calls from the Middletown area. LMPD supports them if they need it, right? Because all these police departments, whether it's J-Town or Middletown or Anchorage, they are required legally to have, there's a technical term for it, but essentially they have to support each other. LMPD has to support them, and if there's a problem even outside of Middletown, and during some of the recent social unrest, I can tell you that the police department of Middletown was tasked with covering and supporting the greater 8th Division area, because so many LMPD resources were pulled downtown. So it does significantly contribute to having faster response times. I mean, we had issues where, people were calling LMPD, and God bless them, they were doing their best. But because of the lack of officers in the 8th Division, it would be a 2-hour response time or greater, right? So it wasn't because they didn't want to, it's because they had to prioritize, right? So it does help in getting more rapid response to certainly the Middletown area, which alleviates the resources of LMPD to then respond to the unincorporated areas. Hope that answers the question.
Okay. All right. Another question is, someone read in Business First of a new development at English Station and Aiken Road of several hundred homes. What are the plans for English Station and Aiken Road conditions?
It's a good question. So what I'll tell you, look, District 19 has more development, new development going on than any district in the city, hands down, bar none. There are a couple development projects that are already in place, some of which are being run by the state. For example, the stretch of North English Station from Shelbyville Road, or is that Old Henry? No, that's English Station, right? From Shelbyville Road to going almost into Berrytown, right? That area, that has had a state project approved for years. They're still working on the right of way. That is both going to be a widening of the road as well as placement of traffic lights, for example, at the intersection of where Aiken and North English Station coincide currently by Blind Squirrel. So there'll be a couple traffic lights plus a widening of that road. The last I've heard, it's about another 2 to 3 years by the time we get all the right of way sorted out and the utilities moved and then construction begins. So unfortunately, there's all this negotiating that has to go. I mean, fortunately, it's a legal process, good thing, but it does take time where the landowners have to negotiate with the state and get, in this case, the state, and get proper compensation for the infringement on their property. So a couple more years for that. There is currently a state project working that is, if you're going north now, so north of where Bush Farm and Old Henry intersect, going north, which eventually turns into, if you keep going north, there's that weird, right angle turn, becomes Factory Lane. If you keep going north from there, that would eventually run you into, I think it's Shelby or Oldham County. I can't remember exactly what county that is, but Ash Road, which is across the county line, eventually that will be a full straight connection going south there. That's a state project. Some of the utility movement has already happened. Additional utilities movement is going to happen, and there's going to be a widening of that road and a straightening of it, going from Shelby and Oldham County directly into the intersection with the highway at Old Henry Road. Aiken Road does have a project already approved. It's pending that project to be completed to widen the turn lane from, well, it's really Bush Farm onto Old Henry into a 2-lane turn lane and all these things, as well as going east on Aiken. We've had a little holdup with it, so I'm not sure what the future of it is, but we're looking at the future of the 2 intersections where Aiken 90 degrees by Stouffer Elementary, and also the intersection of Arnold Palmer Boulevard and Aiken Road. We're looking at options related to that intersection. And then going further east on Aiken to where Johnson Road and Aiken connect, that's where there is a proposal for a new development of about 800 units out there. That proposal includes changing some of the intersections out there, making roundabouts and doing things to allow for easier ingress, egress, and also slowing down traffic. So there are several plans for multiple roads, including North English Station, Old Henry, Aiken, that coincide with a lot of this development. The problem is, quite frankly, the developers are able to move faster than the government is 95% of the time, right? So the developers are able to get their land and start building on it. And meanwhile, the government is doing everything we can to speed, or at least I'm putting pressure on the government to speed up on some of these things. But the road development requires right-of-way, requires utility movement, and all these other processes that just frankly just take time. And so my office is continuing to push for, number one, more money for these development projects, for this infrastructure movement, but also to keep on top of whether it's state, local, et cetera, agencies that have to approve these and move these forward. So hopefully that answers your question, but please stay in touch with my office and we'd be glad to give you more updates as things develop.
Okay. All right, let me see. This is 2 LMPD questions. Will the new OIG only involve LMPD or all public safety departments? And the second question is, where is the city currently with hiring social workers to work on police calls involving crises and other mental health issues?
Sure, good questions. So related to so sorry, let me back up. The first question was about the OIG and their scope, is that correct?
Yes.
We have not finished that legislation. So quite frankly, you know, and even once we finish it, actually implementing it is a whole nother ball of wax, right? So I would say the answer is probably more to come. Right now, I think the intended scope is LMPD, right? The question, when there's even disagreements that the mayor and I have on what you define as public safety. I think the mayor has taken, you know, a definition of public safety that comes out pretty broadly, which has even at times included offices like the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. I don't know if, you know, if under other circumstances that is considered public safety. A very important department, no question, but whether or not they are public safety is another question, right? So should they fall in or out of, if we say that the OIG would have public safety oversight, that type of oversight? I would argue not. What I will say is, I think once the OIG is in place and we have an effective model, clearly we need a much more effective model and oversight of LMPD than we currently have. And once we have that in place, then I think it's a fair debate to say, does that expand to Louisville Fire? Does that expand to EMS, right? Nonetheless, I would say that we have a public safety committee and a government oversight committee, which is us, representing you all, that does this oversight as well. So OIG is probably going to start really focused on LMPD, but we can certainly give a broader oversight as elected legislators, and we will see how that position evolves into the future. And then the second part of the question was social workers working with LMPD. So a couple things. Number one, there have been programs like that already existed, right? There were some partnerships that is not necessarily a new idea. That's something that's been in place throughout this entire conversation. And even programs at U of L that when somebody's a victim of a gunshot wound, for example, and goes to U of L trauma, we have people that the city was funding at the U of L Trauma Center that would work with the family on what you could refer to as victim advocacy services, including links to mental health support, including links to social services, including the prevention of retaliation, right? So you have issues where you have family members sort of retaliating based on, a family member being shot or a friend being shot, and that retaliation can begin right in the trauma center. So some of this has already existed. With that said, this last budget that we passed that went into effect July the 1st, our public safety apparatus, like all police departments in the country, get a certain amount of federal grant money, right? And this is reimbursements that come through the feds. Now, there's a few catches to how you can use that money, but we did earmark, I think, about $2 million of that to expand and significantly accelerate this idea of having social workers or other mental health support personnel very closely working with LMPD to route people in crisis to the proper social services as opposed to treating it as a law enforcement issue, right? So there is significant bipartisan support that we ask our LMPD officers to do too much. We send them out on calls that really law enforcement. Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We send them out on calls that are that really law enforcement is now geared for, and that's what that partnership. So we have invested in this fiscal year an additional couple $2 million just to that effort, and it's still being sort of ramped up. We got some updates the other day, but it takes time to build out the infrastructure for that. But the funding is there, and we're committed to continuing down that pathway.
Okay. I have asked someone, or someone has asked you, if you would repeat the process on how to ask for surplus funds.
I'm sorry, can you
repeat the process to ask for surplus funds?
So just to be clear, I don't think there's I'm assuming, and whoever asked the question, let me put it to you this way. I will do my best to assume what you meant on that question, but if I'm not answering it, please put in the chat how to better answer your question. So the budget surplus from last year to this year, that already occurred, right? So that was essentially because of the change in the Treasury Department rules. It freed up general fund money that will come into this budget cycle. That is not money that will be requested by the public. Eventually, the Metro Council and the Mayor's office have to agree on what we're going to do with it. That money could be used for a myriad of things, right? It could be used for ongoing small business support. We have a fund for small business support that I think it's basically almost about to be tapped out. That was going through December the 31st. We have a fund currently that was for rental assistance for people who are facing eviction, right? And that is, interestingly enough, we're not seeing as much activity on that as we thought we would. And that fund has some surplus money in it. Could we put some more of this money towards some of those programs on a go-forward basis? Yes. Could we use some of it for additional infrastructure spending? Possibly. But that all has to be debated. We don't know yet. First of all, we don't know how much of a surplus there will be until December, until we get a final budget analysis from the Office of Management and Budget. We'll get that in hopefully December budget meeting. And then usually we debate in January on what to do with that. But there are, again, funds that are, I think the small business one is going to be tapped out by December. They both have to be completed by December the 31st, unless the federal government extends them. What we are also waiting for is more guidance, and there's deals going on in the federal level, because these are federally funded programs, to keep in mind, that were just handed off to the cities and states to implement. So we might get further guidance toward the end of the year that money can be extended or used in a different way, or we might get even more funding to support eviction prevention, these types of things. We just don't know yet.
Okay. All right, a couple more questions. There are currently 15,000 households in Metro Louisville that are in danger of water utility disconnect, probably twice that in LG&E disconnect status. Is Metro Council being apprised of eviction statistics and these disconnect statistics?
Sort of. So yes, we have had those conversations at the budget committee level. As a matter of fact, Daniel Frocht, who is the CFO of the city, just presented on this. So first of all, currently you can't be evicted or have your utilities shut off. There's a state order that cannot happen currently. You are absolutely correct. Actually, what we have seen, which is very interesting, because the eviction courts are reopened for back rent, right? So if you're not up to date on your rent, there is a process that landlords can go through for eviction. Again, I want to stress for everybody that if you know folks in those circumstances, there are funds available, and actually both either the landlord or the tenant can apply at this point. So they've made it so it can go either way. The money is obviously going to the landlord to pay that rent. And we've actually just recently, when I say we, the administration eased some of the income requirements, right? Reduced the income requirements to make it easier to apply for that money. Utility shutoffs are right now stopped, right? So you can't, nobody's, even if they're behind on their water bill or their electric bill, they should not be having their utilities shut off. What we have seen is, call it a difference between back rent and back, and the one I'm more familiar with is water, just because Daniel Frocht, as the CFO, actually sits on the board. He's a de facto board member of the Louisville Water Company, representing the city. So, for example, in any given moment, even in the best of economies, there's about 10%-ish, and we had, I think it was the Coalition for the Homeless or another rent advocacy organization was talking about this. About 10% of the rental population is at some phase of at risk to be evicted, either because they're behind in rent or have a family emergency or something, right? As of, and I think this presentation was a month or two ago, that was about 13%, maybe 14%. So we have a delta of about 3 or 4%, right? Obviously trying to manage that. I think the point that was just made is absolutely correct. When you look at water and utility payments in arrears, they are way higher, double, triple, quadruple what they normally are. So it's not like in the case of being late rent, we've seen maybe a 30% or 35% increase. In late utilities, we've seen 200, 300, 400% increases and people paying their utilities. That is, it's clearly a huge concern, and that is one of the factors in why we're holding off on deciding what to do with some of this surplus money, because we obviously don't. One of the things we want to prevent is people being evicted. Certainly at that level, we want people to do what they can, but at the end of the day, we still are in a pandemic. We still have record unemployment compared to where we were. So we're seeing where we can help, and some of this money may end up going exactly to that, to reducing the risk of people having utilities shut off. But as of now, I don't know. I don't think the state has any plans to reinstate that. But I agree that it's a huge issue. We are briefed on it from time to time. And that's part of the calculus on, we need to see what the federal government ends up doing going into 2021, because we may need to take some of this money and dedicate it to efforts like utility relief.
Okay. All right. Here's another question. It says a dangerous area is Taylorsville Road, steep hill just east of the Gene Snyder. Any plan to improve the safety of this road stretch? Reduced speed limit? New exit on I-64 or I-265 to reduce the vehicle count on this section of the road, or a section of road?
I honestly don't have a good answer for that one. It's not something that I've had a lot of conversation about. Representative Miller, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you've been working on additional exits and looking at, how that looks like from the whole iMove plan, plus, I-64 and where we may need additional exits and entrances. Are you familiar with any of this? Otherwise, I can take it, I can use as a takeaway, Laura. If you send that to me afterwards, I can get back to whoever asked the question and do as much research as possible.
Yeah, I believe that, I think he has gotten off the call, but I'll send you that information. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll take a look at that and get back to them.
All right. And then one last question. Any thoughts on our presidential election process? Integrity and trust in our voting is essential, as you know.
So two things. One, I would say that every state should meet with Secretary of State Michael Adams to figure out how to do this. Okay. I don't know if people were watching, but Kentucky was one of the first states to post election results. One of the first states to get to, 99%, get to, where they have counted most, if not all of the votes. and it was done in an incredibly organized manner. No major lines, very minimal problems to vote this year. And considering it's a pandemic year, that's bordering on unbelievable. So kudos to Secretary of State Adams, to Governor Beshear, right? Who they worked in partnership to figure out a plan that sort of worked for everybody. But that is, and our county clerks, God bless our county clerks who are responsible for all of that. So first of all, I would say for those states that, and I know there's several of them that still are figuring out how to count all their votes, I find it flabbergasting that there are states that are still there. And I think they need to take a page out of the Kentucky playbook on that. The only other comment I'll make, I usually try to stay in my lane, right? I'm a Louisville Metro councilman for one district, so I rarely comment on things that are of national purview, just because I don't have the visibility on those things. It's not as though I don't have personal opinions, but they're not based in all the facts. But what I will say this, I would argue that the best comment that I've seen on the presidential election was probably from, I believe it was George W. Bush. He put out a statement related to the election saying, look, all indications at this point look like it's President-elect Joe Biden, right? I know it's not, I know some media outlets have called it for him. The process doesn't really end until almost mid-December, where states have to validate the vote and certify the vote, as well as the Electoral College actually, quote, meeting and voting. But it looks very much like we're looking at President-elect Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. So congratulations, right? God bless. Looking forward to another 4 years. This is what makes Americans get to choose who represents them. It looks like they've chosen. With that said, what President Bush also said was that it is entirely the right of the Trump administration to exhaust their legal challenges. Right, that is not new. Right, I will tell you. I'm going to pick on Secretary of State Adams. Secretary of State Adams is frankly so good at his job because he, in the past, worked for firms that represented campaigns and were on the ground reviewing, monitoring, and reviewing the law and making court challenges to when he felt the law was broken, and then judges adjudicate those disagreements. So for me, it's all about, I'm up for re-election in 2 years. If somebody beats me, God bless you. You beat me. That's what the people must have wanted. And so in this case, I don't take away the president's opportunity to question and to go to the courts and to have the courts make a final decision. But I would say, nonetheless, it very much looks like we're looking at President-elect Biden. And if the courts end up ruling, making their decisions and the states certify, I fully expect, hope, and pray that we continue to do what we've done for a couple hundred years now, which is have a peaceful transition of power, work on transitioning from this administration to the next. And then, the interesting thing is, it looks like we will still have divided government, right? And that we'll have what looks like it's going to play out. We'll have President Biden, a Democrat. We will have a Republican Senate. We will have a Democrat House. And although I know sometimes divided government can be frustrating to people because it results in a lot of debate and slows things down and all of this. I would argue divided government is precisely the type of government we should want, because when you have divided government, everything that gets passed must have had some level of compromise, must have represented both the minority party and the majority party in that body. For example, I'm a Republican, and I'm one of 7 out of 26 in Metro Council. I can get nothing passed unless it's done in a bipartisan way, and I think that's not a bad thing. So if that's how it plays out, and it looks like it is, congratulations, as I said to Mayor Fisher when Mayor Fisher won. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to President-elect Biden, if that's the way it finishes with the certification of the vote and the votes of the Electoral College.
All right. Great answers. They kind of come at you from all different directions, haven't they? Dr. Lester, do you have a few words to say?
I sure do. Councilman Anthony Piaggiatini, thank you so much for your words of wisdom and for your information and for answering our questions. We appreciate your service, and we're rooting for you to get things done in your position as we go forward. So thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you. One last thing. Everybody on the phone and anybody you work with, if you need anything, please contact my office. You can email me, but also email my legislative aide, Kadynn Smith. She is the worker bee behind this operation to make sure we're supporting our constituents in our district. In addition, you can go to my website, louisvilleky.gov/district19, sign up for my newsletter. Once every other week after Metro Council meetings, I send out newsletters on what's going on, and Chanel adds a ton of information from different departments, things going on in the community. So please sign up for that and stay in touch with my office. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a few minutes left. Laura, do you want to go over the events that we have planned?
Right. Well, as you know, due to COVID, we're still doing a lot of, the majority of our events are all virtually. So tomorrow is our regularly scheduled twice a month senior synergy networking group. Then next Thursday, we have our nonprofit affinity group meeting, and then that's at 12, and then at 3 o'clock is our housing and hospitality affinity group Zoom call. And then we'll go on into December, where we will have on December the 8th a possible Zoom call to replace our Christmas party that we normally do in person, which I hate because that's one of my favorite events to get together with everyone on and just be merry, as they say. I do want to remind everybody that we have just started on the website our member-to-member discount tab. We already have a few on there from different chamber members. If you have something that you would like us to post for you, you just need to send that information to me in a PDF or JPEG format with all of your contact information and what you will be offering. We also have a new job board. So if you're needing to hire, feel free to send that to me so that we can get that on the job board for any positions you might be looking for, as well as we have some members that have space for lease. So if you are looking to rent some space, please send that to me, and we can also put that on our website. You're going to be getting some contact information from me today. We're going to have a food drive to help support some of our nonprofit chamber members and their food pantries. I know that as Spark Hope was telling us, with all the online learning and children are at home right now, their food pantries stay pretty bare. They don't keep the stock that they have in the past. So you will be seeing an email coming out from me today with what their needs are. We're going to help out Eastern Area Community Ministries. We're going to help our blessings boxes that are here, located here in the Middletown area. So we'll be doing a drive-through. I'll be out front on my lunch hour during the next couple of weeks. If you want to drive through and hand me whatever non-perishable food items, I can grab them through the window of your car, and you can drive on your merry way, kind of like we did a couple of weeks ago with our Treats No Tricks campaign, and we had a wonderful turnout for that. If you all were not able to participate, I want to thank Story Point for the wonderful box lunch that they provided at no cost to everyone, and then also to all of our chamber members that donated little goodies for our goodie bag to hand to you, as well as your free box lunch. So we are going to do something very similar in December, like we are doing right now with the food drive, but we're going to make it a toy drive. So just trying to do what we can to stay visible and see people and wave people and elbow bump people, even if it is through the window of their car. So we're trying.
How many members do we have now in our
We
chamber?
actually have 446. We just had a new member join yesterday.
Great, great. Thank you very much. So it's 12:59. We want to sign off. We don't want to keep you a minute longer than we promised that we would. So thank you for your attendance today. And please let us know if we can help you. Email Laura. It's probably the best way to go about this. And we have many references, many resources that we can connect you with to hopefully help you succeed in your business and personal lives. So thank you, and God bless everybody. Okay, till next time we meet.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.